In the year 1970, an advisor to Reagan declared in a speech, "We are in danger of producing an educated proletariat. That's dynamite. We have to be selective on who we allow to go through higher education." When these politicians gained power, they made sharp cuts to education funding. California, under Reagan's influence, went from funding 32% of the University of California budget in 1974 to just 16% in 2004. Elsewhere, cuts to education were justified on the logic of living within our means. President Gerald Ford criticized New York City's CUNY system for offering a program where any high school graduate, rich or poor, could attend without paying tuition. Imagine that. In the midst of a city budget crisis in 1976, Wall Street bond investors forced CUNY to charge tuition for the first time. While politicians were slashing funding, business strategies to undermine working-class power restructured industry in a way that redirected income toward jobs in management and finance and away from everyone else. The jobs that paid well required college degrees, and that meant that, even as education funding collapsed, the number of people entering college continued to increase. So, incomes for most people were starting to stagnate, and higher education was becoming more important and getting a job that paid well. So more and more people were going to college. Meanwhile, because of an ideology of false scarcity, state funding was not keeping up. What filled the gap? Student loans. Student loans are actually a creation of the federal government. They were created on the assumption that states would mostly cover the cost of college. So federal loans would be for a relatively small number of people, paid off painlessly within a few years of graduating. But as tuition climbed and state grants receded, a whole industry developed around student lending. By the 1990s, massive student loans were the norm, and colleges began to base their business models around them. Fast forward to today, and the results have been catastrophic. 45 million Americans have student loans, and each graduating class owes more than the last. In 1980, there were only a few $1 million of student loans. By 2000, that number was around 50 billion. In 2010, 200 billion. And today, we have nearly $2 trillion outstanding. Instead of starting a family or buying a car, let alone starting a business or starting a movement, young people today live with a sword of debt hanging over their head. Student debt is even causing many older people to put off retirement.